Yo, what's going on, everyone? So, I'm going to be starting a new series for the next few weeks where I'm going to be looking at the major signings and trades of the NFL offseason and then grading them. If it's a trade, I'll look at the compensation from both sides, and if it's a signing, then I'll look at the contract terms. So let's get started with our pre-free agency look. The first trade we're going to be discussing today is Case Keenum trade with between the Broncos and Washington. So the Broncos knew that Keenum was out of the door either way, whether through a release or through a trade, after they got Joe Flacco from the Ravens, which we will be discussing next. But um and through this trade, the Broncos will now save 2.2 million, which is a good thing because Keenum was most likely to ride the bench, and as Joe Flacco's salary is just too high for him to be a backup or third string quarterback. For Washington, this is a terrible move. They could have if they could have waited for the Broncos to see they had no trade interest for Keenum and then cut him, and then the Washington could have signed him for the veteran minimum. Instead, they're going to have to pay $3.3 million for him, and he's most likely he's a backup level quarterback, and he's at most a game manager. That one season in Minnesota, that was just because his supporting cast was so excellent. You cannot pin their success on him, and it I think what they did was they miscalculated the quarterback carousel, as they most likely thought, okay, we're going to have a suitor for Case Keenum, and with the quarterback carousel mostly set, with Nick Foles heading to the Jaguars and the Broncos looking most likely going to draft a quarterback along with the Dolphins, it's unclear who that competition they viewed was, unless it was the Giants, which is unlikely given that they seem set with Eli Manning. The next trade, it's Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has led the Ravens to a Super Bowl just a few years prior, but he's never been as good as he was during that season. And so the Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson, a quarterback, last year out of Louisville in the first round of the draft with the last selection of that round. And with Flacco injured for part the last part of the season, Lamar stepped in and brought the Ravens to the playoffs. Even though they went one and out in the wild card round, Lamar still has great potential both as a runner and a passer, and the Joe Flacco era was more than over. So now, rather than cutting him, they've got rid of his huge overinflated salary that was much more than his true value to the Denver Broncos and the Broncos. This is a terrible move. The Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson for a reason. Joe Flacco has just been always struggling, unless the month on the calendar is January or even February. And if they draft a quarterback, they'll have to pay Flacco 20 million down the road every year to be a backup. That is completely ridiculous. The Giants Browns trade. The Giants had one of the worst offensive lines last year, and huge free agent addition Nate Solder didn't really pan out in the end with his mega deal to hold the blindside spot for Eli Manning. Now they have some help with a good pass blocking guard who can help keep human fossil Eli Manning from finally decomposing in the pocket. However, it came at a price. Now New York has no edge rush, with their two edge rushers and Jason Pierre-Paul and Olivier Vernon gone. Vernon was still producing as well, with a team high 7 sacks last year, and it's not like he was struggling either. For the Browns are losing some continuity here. Guard Austin Corbett, a second round pick last year, struggled in the preseason and only played 14 snaps last year. Now he's penciled in as a starter. Meanwhile, Greg Robinson was re-signed on a one-year deal and should continue to be addicted to holding penalties. One of the reasons he was considered a bust after being selected by the Rams in the top 5. They now, however, have 2 of the top 10 edge rushers in the league in Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon, but this may come at the price of Baker Mayfield's health. And if Mayfield is getting hit much more times a game and he gets injured, the franchise may regret their decision. With our next trade, we go to the Eagles and the Patriots, the Super Bowl matchup from 2 years ago. For the Eagles, the signing of Brandon Graham to a 3-year, $40 million pact, Malik Jackson to a 3-year, $30 million deal, and Jason Peters to a 1-year deal meant that someone was coming out the door, and that person was Michael Bennett. And his kicker pads are headed to New England. The Eagles basically got back what they traded to get Bennett, but he had 30 knockdowns last year, which is 4th in the league, even though he didn't have quite that many sacks, and he is a top rusher and an amazing disruptor. For the Patriots, New England strikes again. It happens every single year. Bill Belichick found another veteran player who teams are almost too willing to give up, and I guarantee that he's going to produce well under Belichick. With Trey Flowers all but out the door, this adds talent to a team that needs quality disruptors on the line and pass rush help. And finally, yes, you saw it on the thumbnail. Yes, that's right, it's Antonio Brown. And the Steelers, they clearly weren't looking to get rid of Brown last year, as they restructured his contract, and it's going to cost them big, so big in the long term, because now he's going to have $10 million more in dead cap for the Steelers, and for someone who's a generational talent, and you have to give them up, that's completely unwanted. But then again, his character concerns were really too problematic, but this may end up panning out in the end for the Steelers, that they even got any compensation for Brown, as Brown was being a diva on social media and was just almost purposely decreasing his trade value with various tweets and posts, and in the end, the Steelers legend is going to be headed to the Oakland and then later at Las Vegas. For the Raiders, John Gruden, he's kind of fleecing the Steelers here. They got Antonio Brown for a 3rd and a 5th. Antonio Brown, you're talking about the same team who got Amari Cooper traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 1st-round pick, and you have someone who's averaging over 1,577 yards over the past 7 seasons, and he is such an amazing and generational talent. Sure, he's 31, but plenty of receivers have produced well into their late 30s. I feel like he's going to do well in an Oakland uniform, and I think the Steelers are really going to regret that they didn't wait longer. And good thing for the Raiders, now they don't have an almost practically empty receiver room. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next week with the latest signings, and I'll be grading them, as well as any trades that may go down.